If I could just, for the record, say I would not take Congresswoman Porter's investment opportunity because it's investing with other people's money and it's making choices that they might not themselves want to make with those dollars.
I want to start by talking about other people's money because last time I checked, that's all we spend is the American people's money. That's actually the function of Congress. And there are no dollars that we spend that do not come from the American people. So the argument that we shouldn't do something because it's spending other people's money would simply suggest that we don't spend any money at all, including zeroing out the defense budget. Is that in fact what you were suggesting, Dr. Burke, that we zero out the defense budget so that we don't spend other people's money?
No, but it is the case
that I'm reclaiming my time.
You are spending other people's money.
Always.
And that those choices need to reflect what most Americans want.
Okay.
Most Americans do not
Reclaiming
want
my time, Mr.
government-funded
Chair.
universal child
Reclaiming
care.
my time. This is not a hearing about federally mandated Head Start. I don't know what you're talking about. This is actually not what this hearing is about. This is a hearing about the economic and individual investments and returns and benefits, both to the future generation of American children, as well as to our ongoing current economy. Look, the impeachment inquiry is dead. If it was on life support, my colleague Ocasio-Cortez just killed it. There is no allegation of a specific crime. President Biden didn't do anything wrong. There's zero evidence of that. And still, both Democrats and Republicans and the media treat these hearings like the Super Bowl. But no one ever wins, and Americans always lose. So I've got a fresh direction for this hearing. All we have to do is cross off the part after the colon. There, just influence peddling. We should have a policy discussion about how to stop government officials from using their positions to get money or favors. Now, that is a real hearing, one that nearly every American, regardless of party, wants us to hold. I personally think it would be a much better use of this committee's time to conduct meaningful oversight of how the programs are being rolled out and whether they are working as intended to relitigate whether we should have passed this or not. So we can continue to go back and forth on whether this bill is good or bad, or we can get serious about trying to conduct oversight on whether it is actually helping people and what we need to do to push the administration to deliver. Most Americans want healthy communities. Most Americans want dreamers to have a future in our country. But too many Republican lawmakers don't want either of these things, and they know they're not going to convince the people by arguing against popular policies like accessible health care. So instead, they're bringing in buzzwords like border crisis to try to save the day. What powerful people are we holding to account here? The people who would get health care under this rule aren't rich or well-connected. These folks aren't using their powerful positions to abuse the system. They're just regular workers trying to get insurance so they can stay healthy.
We're here to talk today about K-12 public education, and it's often failing our American children. And just as the left has made work optional since the pandemic, showing up for school has seemingly become less optional as well. States and local governments are dividing students by race, pushing at anti-Semitic tropes, teaching students that American institutions perpetuate white supremacy, and promoting sexually explicit gender ideology. Again, let's get back to the facts and the core principles of learning. Leave the social issues, leave the politics to the parents.
Over the next hour or more, my colleagues will be more interested in pointing fingers than in fixing problems, more interested in looking backwards than in looking forward. Two of the fingers that are being pointed are at COVID-19 school closures and then at so-called woke programs that indoctrinate students. Whining about left-wing ideologies, that's not going to bring us closer to solving the challenges of K-12 education. So if we really want to address problems in our school system, we're going to need to take a closer look at how our education system is funded, how things have changed post-pandemic, pandemic, and we need to uplift data-driven strategies that are working to educate kids. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As a single mom of 3 school-aged children and a former 8th grade teacher, I know how important it is that kids learn in the classroom and that we encourage their curiosity. Many members of this committee are also parents, and we all want what is best for our kids. We want them to feel supported and capable. We want them to be learning and be able to attain good, high-paying jobs in the future. Where we as parents can't reasonably teach our kids everything, we of course rely on our communities, including after-school programs and sports, to help fill in the gaps. We rely on our school to help our children learn. And working parents like me rely on educators to keep our kids safe so that we can do our jobs. We're here today to discuss our nation's K-12 public education system. And it's true that in many communities, our elementary and secondary schools barely get a passing grade. Look, none of us, least of all me, miss the days of Zoom school with people yelling about who's taking up the bandwidth and who's using the iPad right now. It sucked. It was terrible for parents. It was terrible for teachers. And most of all, it was terrible for kids. There's no doubt that COVID-19 disrupted learning. Many kids missed out, and there is a real learning recovery that we need to be focusing on. So I'm not arguing with my Republican colleagues about that point. But the reality is that even before COVID-19 reached our shores, and long before Republicans made critical race theory a rallying cry, K-12 achievement was less than outstanding, less than where it needed to be for us to have a strong, stable, globally competitive economy. In 2019, our national K-12 achievement score was a C. I'll say it again, a C. We could start by talking about how senior executive branch officials can leave public service, wait just 1 year, and then legally become lobbyists for big corporations, scoring their new employers profitable government contracts and favorable regulations. They can even be paid by the big corporations during that short 1 year, while they are waiting to become lobbyists as a down payment for their future ability to peddle influence. That's wrong. For the panel of witnesses, by show of hands, as Americans, would our witnesses support extending this 1 year waiting period to at least 2 years?
No, I would.
Okay, so there we go. Republicans, Democrats, even convicted criminals, everybody supports that we should do more to stop influence peddling. This is the kind of good government reform that Americans of all political stripes support. And I should know, in 2022, I passed that exact reform as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act with a bipartisan majority vote. What happened to that amendment? Why didn't it become law? The answer is simple. Nearly 500 former members of Congress worked for lobbying firms. And too many people around here want to follow in their footsteps, and so don't want to make it harder for government officials to become lobbyists. Ultimately, Democratic leadership under then Speaker Nancy Pelosi let the amendment get stripped out of the final bill. When I offered up the amendment again during this Congress, Republican leadership under then Speaker Kevin McCarthy never even put the amendment up for a vote. Both parties have let us down on fighting influence peddling and tackling corruption. But I'm hopeful we can begin a new approach in this very committee. The American people should know that regardless of party, should know that an investigation was conducted into whether Joe Biden did anything wrong. We followed the evidence to where it led a dead end. So this impeachment inquiry should end today. And where should we go from here? We should stop partisan attacks on each other and address the real problem, that the American people believe that the rules that prevent corruption are way too weak. We had a major heat wave harming portions of the United States during most of July and August. And in Southern California, where I live, we saw temperatures get as high as 110 degrees. Mr. Higgins, if you were experiencing this kind of extreme heat, what would you turn on in your home to keep yourself safe and comfortable?
The air conditioner.
The air conditioner. We'd all prefer to turn on the air conditioner. But not every American can afford an air conditioner, let alone pay for the energy needs of that system. I know a resident of California's 47th congressional district who got frustrated during the heat wave. They got literally hot and bothered. Throughout the summer, they didn't have air conditioning in their home. And this constituent is concerned about the increase in temperatures, the air quality issues with wildfires, and they want to buy an energy-efficient heat pump to cool their home, bring down their heating costs, and reduce their dependence on volatile fossil fuels. But she can't just go spend the money because she also needs to replace her broken gas stovetop, which has one working burner, and her 20-year-old dishwasher. Mr. Higgins, how can the Inflation Reduction Act help this Californian afford a heat pump and lower their bills without breaking the bank?
Thank you for the question. It's for the first time, there are new incentives for heat pumps because of IRA. It includes a tax incentive of $2,000, but that only helps households that have the tax liability. So there's also a program to create rebates for low-income households, which will be administered through the states, which for participating households, it can cover up to the entire expense, including installation and electric upgrades.
Okay, so this household has tax liability, so I think they're going to be able to get the $2,000 per year for a heat pump. This sounds like this really would help this Californian be able to afford this heat pump, really bring down the cost, reduce the carbon footprint, help her save money on energy bills in the long term. Mr. Higgins, can this hot and frustrated Californian go get this heat pump using this credit?
Yes, and Treasury is working on guidance right now.
Oh, stop there, Mr. Higgins. This Californian is hot today. Can they go get a heat pump using this credit today?
They'd have to wait until the end. They file their taxes to get their rebate, but Treasury is working on the guidance to make that much clearer so that by next summer, this will be a much smoother option for households than it was this summer.
So right now, the Department of Energy, Department of Treasury, they're still preparing to roll this out.
That's right.
So it's been a year since the Inflation Reduction Act passed. And as a practical matter, I think it's cold comfort to a lot of people to hope that they can figure out somehow with TurboTax how to get this credit. They want to be able to go in the store and get it for less now, up front. Thank you, Chairwoman McLean. We've done some really good hearings together this year. We've come together on a bipartisan basis to uncover the root causes behind the infant formula shortage. We've pointed out how bank regulators need oversight, and we've dug into the role of Chinese money laundering organizations in making the drug cartels rich. What do all of these things have in common? We've tackled real problems: deaths from fentanyl, scared parents unable to feed their babies, risks to our financial system. We've shown we are willing on a bipartisan basis to hold powerful people to account. We identified places where we need guardrails to make our government, our economy, and our country work better. And though we didn't agree on everything, we came together on the big picture to achieve progress. I'm afraid that none of those things are true for today's hearing. Today, we are here to discuss a proposed rule from the Biden and Harris administration that would expand health coverage to everyone lawfully present in the United States. Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act plans are already available to people who are lawfully present in the U.S., but under current federal rules, Dreamers are left out of the definition of lawfully present. President Biden's proposed rule changes that. Why would the president do that? Because, well, DACA recipients are, in fact, lawfully present in the United States. How? Because Congress passed the DACA law. There's not a whole lot else to unpack. So what are Republicans trying to do with this hearing? It is an oversight, because the ability to go to the doctor isn't an abuse of power or an evasion of the law. So I have an investment opportunity for everyone in the hearing room today. For every dollar that you invest, you will get back at least $4. Anyone want to invest?
I'll take it.
It's pretty good. You won't lose your money. You'll always get back more than you put in. And unlike some of these investment schemes, mine is legal. Anyone in? This is just math. 4 is more than 1. More money is better than less money. Economists agree. Republicans, Democrats agree. This investment is not a hard decision. People would snap this up in the real world. Invest $1, get 4 back, no risk. Ms. Boteic, would you believe me if I told you that Congress had that same investment opportunity for our country and turned it down every year?
Sadly, yes.
Why would you believe that?
Because we know that the science is there, that when we support children and families, especially starting at birth, that it yields long-term and outsized benefits for families and for our economy. And yet, here we are over 50 years after Nixon vetoed universal childcare, still with families struggling to find and afford care and providers making poverty wages.
And I think you gave earlier, what is the total new estimate of how much this would generate for our, if we had affordable childcare, full access to childcare, what would this generate for our economy?
So for a family?
For the whole economy.
For the whole economy. Okay, so we're losing right now $122 billion.
$122 billion that we could have in our economy, and yet what we hear around here all the time is that we don't have money to do things. So Congress has had years to invest in universal childcare. Every dollar we put in would have generated, estimates show, about $4 for our economy, yet we still don't have it. Why? Ms. Boteic, why don't we have this?
Well, we need to build the political and public will. The voters are there.
Okay, so the problem must be then the will of the people here, because
Yeah.
voters support this. So let's talk about who's here. How would you describe the gender balance and average age of Congress?
It skews older, male, and whiter.
That's correct. So only about 28% of members of Congress are women. The median age in the Senate is 65, and the median age in the House is 58. So lots, on average, lots of older people, lots of older men, lots of men. Is this the type of group who personally needs early childhood education?
Generally not.
Generally not. So early childhood education won't benefit many members, the average member of Congress. Most members' kids are grown, so they don't have to care about where their kids are going. And even when their kids were young, most members leaned heavily on their wives, and I say wives because most members are men, heterosexual men, to juggle their kids' schedule. And frankly, there's a lot of rich people in Congress who didn't have to worry about how to afford childcare or how to navigate the system because they were wealthy. Too many in Congress don't get it because they never had to live it. So this leads to the familiar policy pattern. The older men collectively, that's our Congress, not to take away from any individual champions, including Representative Beyer and Senator Heinrich, but the collective body of older, richer men in Congress overinvest in things they understand, like the Pentagon, and they underinvest in things like early childhood education that don't personally benefit them, maybe don't even make sense to them, and maybe do not reflect how they lived their lives, even if they are big problems for the majority of Americans. So, Ms. Boteic, when institutions like Congress perpetuate longstanding social disparities for women like this, is there a term for that?
I think it's called patriarchy.
Patriarchy is correct. I would also call it structural sexism. When we say smash the patriarchy, when we say that structural sexism continues to permeate this body and this policy, our policies, that's what we're talking about. We're not imagining it. It's not about interpersonal slights. It is about what this body chooses to get done and to fund and to focus on, and what always ends up on the cutting room floor in legislation. Structural sexism is an age-old story. It's not going to go away by itself. It's going to go away because we make it go away. When we stop undervaluing the work of Black and brown women, or the majority of childcare workers, when we start recognizing that women can and must contribute to our economy if we're going to have a globally competitive economy. So, Ms. Boteic, to fix this problem, Congress has to abandon these sexist, outdated ideas and start thinking more about investments. How much would Congress need to invest to establish universal early childhood education?
We've been advocating for $700 billion over 10 years to invest in high-quality early care and education, which could easily be supported by taxing wealthy individuals and corporations.
So you're advocating for $700 billion over 10 years? Mm-hmm. President Biden, I remember everyone proposed $400 billion for preschool and childcare, and yet that would have multiplied by 4, generated trillions of dollars for our economy. So all of our witnesses, everybody said that we'd take this bet, we'd quadruple our money if we could. So investing in early childhood education shouldn't be a hard call, even given the profile of Congress. We should all want to make investments that pay back. So if my colleagues are not moved by the clear economic benefit of investing in early childhood education, maybe they'll be moved simply by this single mom asking them to care on behalf of all the other parents of young children who are struggling in this country. I implore Congress to invest in childcare workers, and early childhood education. There are lots of ways that we could deliver this. Like Representative Beyer, I have had lots of different kinds of arrangements. Universal, to quote what Ms. Botaic said, doesn't mean the same. Universal means that the funding, the outcome, the choice is there and available. If we had universal health care in this country, and we don't, some people might choose to go get a colonoscopy every year, and a lot of people won't. It's the same thing with childcare. I personally have had my children in big corporate care. I have had them hourly in-home, part-time. I have had full-time live-in. I have been in a family-owned small business, and I have had in-home family-based care. All of it. And you know what it all was? Really helpful. Particularly as a single mother. Because there is no other person. Senator Vance's hypothetical says that one parent might prefer to stay home. That's probably true. There's a lot of statistics that show that parents, men and women, have different preferences at different points in time. But what about the 10 million single moms? Where do they fit? Dr. Burke, where did you put your children in childcare?
Well, I'm not going to bring my children into this hearing, so it doesn't have any bearing on this. So
Dr. Burke, do you have children?
I do.
So I'm sharing my story because my story is one that doesn't get heard in this Congress. Because you know how many single moms there are?
One or two?
One. Childcare, custodial care to help people who may choose all kinds of different options. I've had full-time care. I've had 3/4 care. I had when I had a spouse, he stayed home some years. That was how we fit the pieces together. But that's what this hearing is about, not jamming one size fits all. But if there isn't the money, there won't be the choice.